friends, and welcome to What the Fringe, the podcast dedicated to all things Fringe theater. I'm your host, Lauren Hance. Each week, I visit with a Fringe artist to hear all about their endeavors and gain insight into their process. This week, I'm visiting with Jimmy Hogg, who's touring two of his newest shows this year on the Canadian festival circuit, Mashed and Evie and Alfie, A Very British Love Story. Mashed is Jimmy Hogg's 9th solo show of original material. It starts with his story of hitchhiking to see his girlfriend, the retelling of which sends Hogg off on numerous tangents, asides, and comedic cul-de-sacs, often the case with Jimmy's work. It is largely autobiographical, and his signature high-paced, tangential style punctuates the stories with wit, charm, and verve. Evie and Alfie, A Very British Love Story. Meet Evie and Alfie, a retired, quintessentially British couple, as they potter around their house, drinking tea, bird spotting, and reminiscing. From multiple award-winning Fringe legends, Alex Dallas and Jimmy Hogg, comes a comedy full of wit, verve, and heart.
My advice is always go in there expecting to lose money, because I always say you can't go into a festival and hope that people like your show, hope you do your show well, but also be really worried about money. You can't have both. You can only worry about one of them. So I always tell people, if you're going to be worrying about money, then get a regular job, work that job, put some money away, or fundraise and get a few grand, enough to be able to cover the costs you need, and then go and enjoy doing your show, because you can't do both.
Jimmy Hogg is a writer, comedian, and storyteller who has made his name on the Canadian Fringe circuit over the last 20 years with his high-energy, physical, tangential style. Originally from Plymouth, UK, he studied drama and theatre arts at Goldsmiths College, University of London, Le Coq and Clown in Spain and France. His show includes Curriculum Vitae, Figgy Pudding, Like a Virgin, and The Potato King. He co-wrote and starred in Evie and Alfie, A Very British Love Story, which won Best English Language Production at the 2025 Montreal Fringe Festival. Comparisons to Eddie Izzard, Rick Mayall, and John Oliver are frequent, if not always accurate or deserved. He has numerous awards and merits and is an 18-time Best of Fringe winner. Jimmy, welcome to What the Fringe.
Hi. Thanks for having me, Lauren. This is loads of fun. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I'm so excited to have you. I met you for the very first time last year in Edmonton. And I think one night we had dinner, a group dinner, and we got to chit chat, and I found you super fascinating, and just love your kind of long career in Fringe and how you're making it work, which is really incredible and very admirable, I would say. And then I also saw Evie and Alfie, and I loved it and gave it a Best Ensemble nomination last year. I have so many feelings about this show, about the success and longevity of Evie and Alfie. Is a brilliant show. I was just really excited to have you here.
Yeah, great. Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's start off, because you obviously went to drama school, you did clowning school, storytelling. What did that journey look like for you going into those different genres?
When I was about 11, my mum and one of my aunties and my nana all realised that I was quite an energetic child and I liked sports, and they somehow encouraged me to do drama. So I started doing drama when I was 11, 12. And I was good at it as a kid, and I enjoyed it so much. And then I almost dropped off the face of doing any theatre. And then I was around 20, 21. I hadn't been to university. And I ran into a friend of mine called Rod Dixon, who's kind of like my personal Yoda of theatre. He's about 20 years older than me. And he said, Jimmy, what are you doing? Why aren't you? It's the last year where the government, the local educational authority, will pay for you to go to university. And this is like 1997. So he said, look, I'm doing a pre-access to university course in drama. Come and do that. I went to Goldsmiths University, did that, which was an academic course, because in a lot of theatre courses they won't actually pay for you to do it, and it's prohibitively expensive, hence the reason why most of the people that come out of the UK that work in theatre and are working actors come from usually quite wealthy or privileged backgrounds. So yeah, I ended up going to do an academic degree in theatre, which was quite boring a lot of the time, but I was lucky enough that the university I was in, they had 3 different studio theatres, and they would literally just, the guy who was the caretaker would give us the keys and just say, make sure you lock up. So we'd go in there at 9 p.m, a bunch of us, and we just create theatre and just create new work. And I basically sort of sacked off most of my academic studies in favour of just creating things, which was wildly fun. And through connections there and being involved, I ended up going to study some commedia dell'arte in France in the summers, and I went to study like the Coq and Clown in Spain, which was amazing. And I did that after I finished university. And that was all before I moved to Canada, which happened by accident around 22 years ago when I came to see some friends.
Wow. So, yeah, because like in the US, we just don't have as much clown. So I love that your education fluctuated between drama school and clown, and you were getting European training and all of that. That's exciting. And then did you get storytelling training, or was that something that you just kind of fell into as you started doing Fringe?
Do you know what? I often tell people, if they say, what's your show like? I say, it's like hanging out with me in a pub, only you don't speak. And I think it's a thing that exists. Jeremy Paxman wrote a book. He's a very posh guy, Jeremy Paxman. Some people might know him. He's like a political analyst, and he was like host of University Challenge. And he wrote a book a long time ago called The English, and he's analysing what English people are. And one of the things he said that always stuck with me in that book is he says, English people esteem sense of humour higher than anything else. And I think that really transposes itself to how pub culture works. And we know that pub culture in the UK and Ireland is quite unique. It's not really something that exists anywhere else. America and Canada have it to a certain extent, but pub culture in Britain and Ireland is a very particular thing. And I've always said there's lots of people you wouldn't want to hang out with, but who are fun in the pub. So I think the pub is where you learn to be a storyteller. And I grew up in a pub. Like, my dad left the military when I was like 11, then my parents ran pubs. We lived upstairs. When I was 14, 15, I'm hanging around with adults, playing pool with them, playing darts, chatting to grown men and grown women who are funny and quick. And I just wanted to be accepted within that world. So you've got to be fast. You've got to be, if you're telling a story, if it's not funny and engaging, people cut you off. So you sort of learn in the trenches in a way. So that's where I think I learned storytelling. And that's why a lot of British people, I think, and I include Irish people within that, have a natural storytelling bent.
I hadn't put those pieces together, but I guess I'm just not that familiar with pub culture, because really all I know is what I've seen on television. You know, like I haven't spent a lot of time in a British pub.
It's quite different to the North American pub experience, because in North America, every single pub, with the exception of dive bars, serves food. Whereas I remember when pubs in the UK, they all started doing food in the 90s, and my dad was just complaining. He was like, I'm having a pint there, someone's having their dinner next to me, and you just would feel awkward about it because he's so English. It's just like, what? This somehow doesn't work. It's a unique thing, and I think what happens is that you just become a storyteller in that environment, because you literally hang out with a bunch of your friends, you sort of huddle around, you're often not, we don't usually sit at tables in real pubs, you're not sat down, you're sort of in a big sort of group, moving around, holding your pints, you're packed in, and everyone's just telling stories. No one's asking anyone a question. No one's like, how's work? How's the family? It's not that polite. It's like, let's go, give us your best story. And often friends are like, oh, you got to hear Tommy's story about this. Oh, you got to hear Sharon's story about that. And everyone just, you might have reheard them, but people retell them. It's a real storytelling environment. It's really fun.
I have a kid that loves stories. She's young. She's quite proper, but she's constantly like, tell me a story. And I'm like, I don't have any just in my pocket, so I don't know if I'd survive. But she would love it. I should take her to a pub.
Oh, she'd love it. In those environments, there's often lots of younger people. They're also multi-generational, you know? A lot of the local pubs I'll go to, when I go to my dad's local pub, I'll go back to some of my dad's pubs. There'll be people of every social strata and every age group and all types of people. And it's something of a leveler. And it's also, I mean, it's what community is, right? But yeah, I think I learned through that. And then what I started doing in storytelling was, I used to be more of a pure storyteller, where I'd try and write something that was close to the literature. So I think a lot of the early solo shows I wrote were probably, I'd consider them now to be a little bit overwritten, a little bit too verbose perhaps. Do you know what I mean? I'm just a bit too wordy and a bit too full of myself, which is a sort of young writer's mistake sometimes, I suppose. And then what happens, and I think this always happens with people that work in the arts, is if you do something that isn't particularly funny or not meant to be funny, but you have two jokes in there and you get a laugh, then all that happens is you want to have more of those in your show. You know, you can have someone who's doing a drama and it has two jokes in it, and all they're thinking about is, I want that laugh. Because that's the only real sort of feedback that you immediately get from an audience, right? The only feedback you can actually hear while the show's happening until you get to the end, other than perhaps the occasional gasp or something. So I started basically writing sort of stories that I thought were interesting about working class life and about autobiographical stuff. And then I just more and more was like, I'm just going to make every chance I get, I'm going to make this funnier. Let's just pump up the fun here. So now I consider myself a sort of comedic. I dabbled in stand-up, which is fun and has its own place. And I'm a big fan of watching stand-up, but I don't really always like the environment I think it's very short form, and it's all very paired with the sort of white male skinhead, who wants to shout at you and wants to heckle you and wants you to respond to heckling, which I can do and I enjoy doing, but yeah, it's not really for me. I prefer a theatre festival, theatre environment, and then doing comedic storytelling within it. And I find that what's happened in the last decade, if you watch Netflix specials, is that before all comedians were just coming out and doing jokes, and now what they're doing is they're doing a story, because they've realised that it's much more interesting when you hang all of your jokes, all of these bits you've got, and you manage to have a through line and a thread and a story that somehow has meaning. And there's still a place for people who are one-liners and all that sort of stuff, and the absurd comedians and everything else, and prop comedians and everything else in between. But I do feel like storytelling and comedy have sort of met in the middle, and that's always been the case in the UK and Ireland. There's people like Billy Connolly, for example, who was always just a storyteller, just tell stories, but was incredibly funny. And now I think that's bled into the North American comedy scene, where they're beginning to do stories.
Yeah, I love that. I'm more of like a storytelling. I want there to be something meaningful in it. I do love some very good comedies. There's a handful of comedies that are just funny, and I love it. But, and I'm not as keen, especially at Fringe, to go see a stand-up comedian. That's like, I would rather go see a storytelling. And that is so true. Like some of the Netflix series that I've watched recently, I watched Josh Johnson, I think the other day. He's storytelling. And I was like, he reminded me of like Mike Birbiglia. I've been a big Birbiglia fan for a very, very, very long time. And he's a storyteller. He's not a stand-up comedian. He's a storyteller. I love the storytelling, and I love stuff that, like you just said, has the through line and everything. Let's talk about Fringe and how you got into Fringe. Was that something you were doing back in the UK, or that you started when you moved to Canada?
I went to Edinburgh Fringe in 1997. I went with a mate. We drove up and we did a little bit of not very well prepared street theatre clowning just for fun. And we slept in a Vauxhall Cavalier, because even then it was prohibitively expensive, and just went to see shows every day. I just went to see 5 to 7 shows a day for 7 days. Would wake up in the morning, we'd drive the car to a leisure centre, pay 50 pence to use the swimming pool, just have a shower, and then go and park the car somewhere else, and then basically have a big breakfast to deal with the hangover, and then go and watch 7 to 8 shows and stay out all night. And I was like, I want to do this. I don't know what this is. I still remember that year. I still saw some of those influential things, some world-class theatre, and then even just seeing a bloke with a microphone in a basement at 2 a.m. playing to 7 people. And I was like, this is cool. He was great. I was like, this guy is amazing. This guy's playing at 2 a.m. in a basement, and he's out there just giving it everything. I just loved it. And then I didn't really think about Fringe at all until it was around 2004, 2005. I applied to do a couple of Fringes, and then 2005 what happened is I didn't get into any, and then a person I worked with just said, I got a Fringe spot. I said, what are you going to do? They said, I don't know, I don't write, I don't have anything, but I want to be in it. And they went, okay. They said, do you want to write it for us? I said, you and who? They said, me, my friend, and possibly another guy. So I wrote a 3-hander, which I directed for them, which was fun. I'd already written a solo show because I'd realised that was a viable option. Because before, I wanted to do just like pure theatre and write like plays with lots of characters. And then you realise that's not really... There's only a very small amount of people that can do that and can make money doing that and can actually get their work produced. And I remember like renting a DVD from a really, really cool film buff in Toronto, really cool indie store, had like all the Criterion stuff way before everyone else did, had all the Kurosawa stuff. You're like, this place is cool. I'd go in and it was cheap and they were nice and they were normal. There was no like late fee. I just remember seeing in the Jonathan Demme section, because I was a big student of film as well. And I remember thinking, I love Jonathan Demme. Obviously, we know Jonathan Demme, particularly for Silence of the Lambs, amongst other things. And there was a movie there called Swimming to Cambodia, which was Spalding Gray. And most people do solo show or do monologues know who Spalding Gray is. He's one of the guys from the Worcester group who became famous for doing it. And I rented that, not knowing what it was going to be, but knowing that Jonathan Demme had directed it. And I watched Spalding Gray do a 90-minute monologue that was absolutely mind-blowing. And I was like, And me and a fellow performer, Martin Dockery, always talk about, he discovered or had first heard Spalding Gray around the same time as me. And it wasn't so much that I wanted to do anything that Spalding Gray was doing, but what I realised was that you can do a solo show and it's completely acceptable. Because before I thought, oh, that's just going to seem like I'm full of myself. That's like a sort of thing. That's an ego trip. That means I'm up my own arse. I think I'm so good. I want to be on my own on stage. I don't need anyone else, and it's not. It's because I immediately was attracted to the form and then realized it's a thing I could do. So yeah, let's just do this then.
So beautiful. I love all of that story. And then now you've made it like a full-time career. I kind of want to talk just a little bit about what the rhythm of your life looks like, because not everybody's familiar with the Canadian system, especially as I've been traveling abroad. They're like, well, what's going on? And that you guys can travel from the East Coast to the West Coast, hit up all of these festivals, and take 3 or 4 months. You start to build an audience base. So it makes it really easy to tour in because you're not having to do as much publicity as you did when you were younger. You just flop up your poster, tell people you're coming, and they'll come to the show because they love you because you've already built that trust with them. And so you're getting to do that. I'm assuming you're creating in the off season, you're chefing, bartending, all of that kind of fun stuff. What does your life and rhythm look like as a full-time Fringe performer?
Usually what happens is the Fringe season sort of ends. Let's work backwards. The Fringe season ends around mid-September, Vancouver being the sort of last one. So that ends, and usually then you go home to wherever you live after touring. And then you go, oh yeah, I should start applying for Fringe in October because some of the applications come out straight away. And so I've been lucky enough that I have a lot of experience in the service industry as a bartender, as a server, as a chef, as a general manager of restaurants, as a wedding planner. Like, I've done all of it since I was a kid. So it's good to have that. And so usually what happens is I usually just email a few people and call a few people because I don't usually have a job lined up. I message them before I get back and then go, hey, do you need someone? And luckily enough, every time I've done that, I get back and I get a regular job. So I get back, get a regular job, and I work my regular job from end of September to about now, which is almost June 1st. And then I start touring. So I'm going to Montreal in 2 weeks. And then I tour. To be clear to people who maybe want to tour and haven't done it, they might not realize that a lot of what I do is what you call bring your own venues, and I'm sure your audience is familiar with that parlance perhaps, but you can apply to a Fringe, and if you get in, you get a regular venue spot, and if you don't, then you can try and find your own venue, and you generally pay a lot more money to be in that because you have to pay the venue as well as paying the Fringe fee, but you have agency over your schedule. You can do more shows sometimes if you want. The venue might be bigger than the one you would have got. So that's sort of worth doing if you have the finances and the resources to be able to do it and take that gamble, because it is a more of a financial risk. Or if, like you say, you've been around a bit and people know you. So, for example, I mean, in Winnipeg and Edmonton and Vancouver, those three for sure, I will in a heartbeat do a bring your own venue because I know I can get people out because, like you say, people know you, and I just keep going back, and it makes sense to keep going back. You don't want to miss a year almost.
Yeah. What happens if you miss a year in a city? What do you feel like? Have you done that before?
Yeah, I mean, I have, but yeah, for sure. Post-pandemic, I've just done the last 4 or 5 years straight. I've done a lot of the Fringes. Before that, I was in and out, and I realized that if you have a show that suddenly takes off and you really get a name and people remember it, then you got to go back because you'll just do well in name recognition and pre-sales and all that sort of stuff. And that's how you can start making money. I mean, there's different ways of being able to make a career or make money, because I make about 50% of what I make in a year I make just doing Fringe, sometimes more. It's becoming more and more each year, which is good because the more I can do it, the more I can do more art and write more shows and then do less of the bartending serving. So it's kind of like the more I do it, the more I do it, right? You got to commit to it. And it's a financial risk to a certain extent. And I think a lot of people, when they start out doing Fringes, or at least if they're not, my advice is always go in there expecting to lose money. Because I always say you can't go into a festival and hope that people like your show, hope you do your show well, but also be really worried about money. You can't have both. You can only worry about one of them. So I always tell people, if you're going to be worrying about money, then get a regular job, work that job, put some money away, or fundraise and get a few grand, enough to be able to cover the costs you need, and then go and enjoy doing your show, because you can't do both. Because the way it splits you emotionally is so difficult when you're like, oh, I hope my show's good, and then you're like, oh, no one's here, or, I need people here. You can't have both. It's just too much of a mental strain.
That is so accurate and such beautiful advice. I'm going to play on repeat for myself because it is. And I think when I got into French, I didn't understand that. And I've hit up a lot of festivals once and I'm like, oh, when you return year after year, this is when you start making more of an impact. And this is when people remember you. And it's interesting. I went to a festival last year and then I returned this year, but I didn't have a show. I was there for a different reason. And everybody was like, oh, they like remembered me. And it was like kind of weirded me out for a second. And I was like, oh, this is what it feels like to return, And so that's really good.
It's funny at first when people recognize you. I mean, I've been going back lots of times, and I obviously sound a bit different than most of the people that are at the festival. But at the same time, at first, when people recognize you, it's kind of weird because I'm not famous and we're not famous. But then you realize if you've been sat for an hour listening to someone talk and looking at their face, you probably remember that face. Or at least I hope you would.
Right. You hope, if you enjoyed it. Yeah. It's quite the compliment, and it's very humbling when people remember you. So, well, let's talk about some of your memorable shows. Let's talk about Evie and Alfie. Was this your first collaboration with Alex? Had you guys worked together before?
No, we've been mates. I met Alex. I mean, Alex is English as well. She's from London, and she's done loads of stuff. She was part of a very successful all-female sketch comedy troupe called Sensible Footwear that toured all over the UK and then found out about the Canadian Fringes in the 90s and has toured everywhere across North America. And we've been friends since about 2007 or 8. I think it was maybe in Toronto. Fringe. She lives in Toronto too. I think I ran into her and someone, oh, you two are English. And we just stood there and chatted for a bit. And she's very funny, brilliant storyteller, just has so many, one of those people that just has stories about everything. She is an absolutely hilarious, deeply fascinating, very passionate, very left as well, very politically savvy, politically minded. Like she's got that sort of protest spirit and she's very magnetic. Like you're sort of drawn to her. And we'd both done solo shows. She did one of my favourite solo shows I've ever seen, which is called Horseface, which is almost a companion to the Me Too movement. It's a piece around that, but it's very funny, dark, brilliant. And we were both doing solo shows in Victoria Fringe in 2024. Victoria Fringe is lovely. It's a very cute little town. There's only like 30 shows, maybe not even that many, few venues. You get 5 shows in like a 12-day period, so you have a lot of time off. But you're in Victoria, which is just stunning, nature everywhere. So Alex and I had gone whale watching. Let's go whale watching. So we're out whale watching, and we're on this little boat. And I was like, Alex, I have an idea for a show. It's Evie and Alfie. And I think I'd already given it that title. But I said, I can't write it on my own. I need you to write it with me. Because I'd only written the first line of the show. I'd written the first stage direction in my head, which was we meet Evie and Alfie in their front room. Evie is sat doing a crossword. Alfie is sat reading the newspaper. Nothing happens for some time. That's all I wrote. And then I pitched the idea to Alex. And she was like, oh, yeah, let's do it. And so we started writing it together, and that was it. It
is a really beautiful piece of theater, and I think you've been getting a little traction, like getting bookings outside of Fringe. Is that accurate?
Yeah, we did. It was really lovely. Like a guy called Hans, who runs an arts festival called the Nautilus Festival, which happens in Camrose, which is about an hour and a half outside of Edmonton. He'd seen our show, and then he wanted to have it as the opening show at his little film and arts festival. And so brought us out, and we did that. And we also did a co-pro fundraiser for the Edmonton Fringe as well. And then now we're in like chats with quite a few other sort of provincial theatres about them wanting to book it, which is brilliant because that's a great step forward, and that's a great example of if you do Fringe, you can get that exposure and you can make that leap to be doing stuff outside of Fringe as well, which can be in some cases. I mean, there's lots of people I know who still do Fringe, who do so much work, and they all originate at Fringe. I'm thinking about people like Ingrid Hansen, who does her puppet show, Stephanie Morin-Robert, James and Jamesy, Chase Padgett. There's so many people that started in Fringe and still do Fringe, but get so many of their bookings through the exposure that Fringe gives them. It's
really special to be able to do that. And I think even Alfie, I saw it, and I think I probably told you this, and I just will tell you over and over again. It reminded me of A.R. Gurney's Love Letters. And I don't mean to be like, oh, it's just like the same show. It's not the same show, but it just reminded me of that, which is such a prolific piece. And I don't know where to do it, but I'm like, where can we get someone to develop this? I wanted it to be longer. I felt gypped that it was an hour. This is not an hour-long show. This show is longer than an hour. This is a full-fledged 2-act or whatever you do. I want to see the whole thing. It's a film. If anybody's out there listening and they want to develop a show, it needs that. It is just calling for it. Do you guys have thoughts for that? Would you be open?
Oh, yeah. No, we already have, like, sketched out. The way we wrote that show was, like, we had all the scenes of them being elderly people in the house, and we flashed back. And, I just said to Alex, we sat down, and we were like, what scenes do you want to see from people's lives? Imagine an old couple you meet, and they're 80 years old, whatever they are, and you want to see flashback. Which moments in life do you want to see? And there's some pivotal moments you want to see, or some bits that are quite droll. And so we made a huge list of scenes, and then we just wrote a bunch of scenes of them at various points in life, when they first meet, proposal scene, lots of stuff that's not in the show, being at their son's wedding. We have all these other scenes, going to a party at their neighbour's house. We have so many other extra scenes, and so we know that the show can be longer, but that's one of the restrictions of most Fringe festivals, is that a show can't be longer than 60 minutes, which is good and bad. I mean, sometimes you want your show to be longer, but at the same time, I'm a big fan of things that are shorter. Most things I think are too long. It's one of those shows where I'm like, I know when you get into the last 10 minutes, we need an extra 10 minutes to carry us through into that last few moments. So, yes, I have a longer version.
I want somebody to pick it up and develop it, like with you guys. That's my heart's desire for you, because the show is so... it's sweet, it's tender, it's complicated and simple at the same time. And it is a joy to watch. So I'm rooting for that for sure. What was it like because you're usually a solo performer. So what was it like to develop the show with Alex and go on the road as a two-hander? It's
great. I mean, I'll say one thing immediately, is that being on stage, it's weird when someone else is saying stuff, because I'm like, oh, this is weird. I get to just stand here and react. I'm like, oh, I get to breathe. It's way less tiring. Alex is a absolutely brilliant performer, right? She's up there. So that's a complete joy and pleasure, just to witness and watch Alex and watch her just do stuff while I'm on stage with her, going, oh, you're really good. This is really fun. But the process was really fun as well, because we're mates and we just get on, and I can say anything to her, she can say anything to me. We know each other's darkest secrets. We're very open. When we started getting together and working about it, it's like, all right, let's just get it out there. Because if you're going to have a working relationship with someone in the arts, you got to know each other that way, right? And not be afraid. I feel like a lot of relationships, not just in the arts, in work as well, people are quite guarded. And for this show, we both needed to be vulnerable, because we're exposing and we're discussing the characters of Evie and Alfie, these old people. We're drawing upon our own parents, our own grandparents, our own life experiences. A lot of it is, Alex is 67, 68 almost, and I'm 50. So a lot of the stuff that I'm writing about, the characters are in their 70s when you meet them. Alex is the one who knows about that. I don't know about I know about the characters when they're middle-aged and young, and so it was great to bounce off each other in that sense and hold each other accountable. Alex always says that when we started creating it, what happened is we realized who the couple were and what the relationship was, and we wanted to make it more complex than just a regular relationship. We didn't want to just make them these stereotypes. So their relationship, if it's not always fully realized on the stage, it's because it's a shorter version, but their relationship in our minds is very complex and nuanced, and they have all of the baggage and stuff that everyone else has. But Alex always said, and I completely agree with her, that we really fell in love with these characters, like as people. We just really, really like these people, and we really root for them, even when they're not at their best. And that's a really fun place to start when you're writing characters. And so anytime we get them to speak, it's just so much fun. We would just howl with laughter at each other. We're writing bits and we're just sort of improvising a bit, hanging out in a front room or in my house, whatever, drinking tea. We're basically very much like these characters anyway, in a lot of senses. So it was really delightful working with Alex. She's an absolute joy.
So fun. I got to visit with her a little bit. She's so kind, so kind. I really enjoyed my interactions with her. Well, let's talk a little bit about your solo show, Mashed. And I usually stalk people online, figure out their background, and I apologize that I didn't do enough to go Jimmy Hogg, the Potato King, and now we've got Mashed, which is, I'm assuming, like a potato thing. First and foremost, where did the potato stuff come from? I have to know.
No, that's a great question. Here's the thing. What happens is, a lot of times with a festival, you have to submit a title for your show. And you might not have written that show yet, because they might be publishing their program sometimes like 3-4 months in advance. They might want to print it and they go, what's your show? And one year, I mean, it's like 5 years ago maybe, I was like, I don't know what my show is. I haven't written it. So I just decided to call my show The Potato King, because that's a thing that's happening. Like, I'm very good at making potatoes. It's a thing that I'm known for amongst my peers. And once literally someone just referred to me as the Potato King. And I'm like, oh, that's a fun name for me. And it's literally my Instagram handle. So I basically wrote this show called The Potato King, which was, when I started writing, I was like, I always think the show title for me doesn't really matter for my solo shows, because it's just me talking about whatever I'm talking about. The title is just the title. But then I realized, I was like, okay, I need to put some potato content in there. So I did, and there's lots of potato content in the show The Potato King. But you realize the word potato is a fun word. When you see a show called The Potato King, you don't think, I wonder if that's funny. You just already immediately go, yeah, The Potato King, it's funny. And then I did a second show, which I was like, oh, I'll keep the potato theme going. And I called the second show, was called Potato Potato, spelt phonetically, and that had literally no potato content. And this third one, I called it Mashed, just because I think mashed is a fun word and a fun, actually, this is not in the show at all, this is not anywhere near anything. When I was 17, me and my best friend, Jamie Chilvers Chili, we both got guitars around the same time. We were learning to play guitar, and we're both terrible, and we just would write songs, and we decided to call our band The Mashed. So it kind of is that name, that word mashed has always been in my head. I mean, I think the fourth potato-based show is going to be called Fully Loaded. I realized that yesterday because I said to my partner that I do a lot of cooking at home. I'm a good cook. I said to my partner, she was like, I want a sandwich. I said, what kind of sandwich do you want? And she just said, Fully Loaded. And I was like, oh yeah, that's a good name.
Uh-huh. You've got all the potato stuff. Potato King, potato, mashed, fully loaded. I mean, at some point, I'm going to have to leave that behind and move on to something else. Or maybe I won't. I love writing show titles. I love thinking of show titles. And I always have to submit the show title. I mean, I literally just wrote the end of the show Mashed 5 days ago, and it opens in 12 days. So there's no way I could submit a title that would make sense for any festival, on time. Because I tend to spend a lot of time ruminating and just stating and going, oh, that's, yeah. And then I occasionally have flurries where I write stuff. I love how every artist works differently. I read a book, I can't remember the title of it, but it's like every chapter is about an artist and the different ways that they work. I remember reading that and going, oh, there's no one way. There is no one way to do it. And that's like a beautiful example of that. You're like, I'm thinking about it. And then maybe I'll put a bunch of stuff down and think about it again,
For sure. And people, we've all read stuff on how to create and how to write and how to do this and how to act and how to do that. And ultimately, it's like a buffet for me. It's like just go through it, and some things work for you, some things don't. So find the things that do. I think a lot of the teaching of that sort of stuff, if it floats your boat, I'm opening a show in 12 days. I always write shows that are really very difficult to memorize, that have too many tangents and too many long bits that I'm like, no, you can't. It's a real pain in the ass. I'm my own worst enemy. Literally, I just said out loud to a friend, I said, I think once I finish writing this show and I open it, I'm going to start writing the next show for next year, so I don't have to do it at this time. I'm going to write it so it's finished 6 months in advance, so I don't have this 12-day lead-in where I'm just waking up immediately going, oh no, is the first thing I say. Oh no.
Jimmy, I really hope that happens for you, but I feel like you might start ruminating on it, but next year, 12 days before.
Totally. And the Ruminator is a good name for a show.
Oh, there you go. You can have that one for free. I give it to you.
No, that's more of a gem roll show, the Ruminator.
Oh, mm-hmm. He would need a few extra other words in there that would zhuzh it up, that have nothing to do with ruminating.
No, it would be the Wandering Ruminator and the Scientist from Belgium. That's what it would be called.
You need to message him that.
You can't talk about Fringe for a second without gem rolls coming up. It's just a fact. It's part of life. It's inevitable. It's like taxes.
Yeah. I hadn't done much Canadian Fringe festivals, and so I saw my first gem roll show in Edmonton last year.
It's a rite of passage.
It is, yeah. Well, I love chatting with you, but we're getting close to the end here. So I want to ask you my favorite question, and I feel like you're going to have a million stories, but you can pick one or two or whatever, however, you're a storyteller, do your thing. What has been an interesting, awkward, or heartwarming Fringe interaction that you've had?
My favorite thing to talk to other artists about, particularly Rob G, who's British, who talked a fair bit, Martin Dockery, loads of other people that I talked about these things about, is I love to talk about when you do a show that is really bad, or when you do a show that was horribly wrong, or a show where there's almost no one there. I have so many fun ones like that. I mean, I just have two. I can't help it. I have two. One is the first time I ever did a Fringe festival, which wasn't Toronto, which was 2005. I went to Abbotsford, BC, to this tiny festival that no longer exists. And it was 7 shows there. It was all very amateur, except for one group called the Cody Rivers Show, who were from the States, from Bellingham, who were amazing. And I was there doing my first ever solo show, Curriculum Vitae. And the people who'd run this Fringe had one venue. They booked this 900-seat venue for all the shows. So I come out on stage, do a show. No one was going to this festival. No one knew. I walk out on stage to this audience on my opening show of 5 people. There's 2 children sat in the front row who are maybe about 9, 10. Middle of the theatre is a woman on her own. And then there's someone in the back corner. And it's a giant theatre. Like, you know, thinking proper, like I'm in Carnegie Hall here, doing a show to 5 people with my chair, come out and I'm dressing up with a cup of tea. And I'm doing this monologue, and it's quite new, and it's quite fast, it's quite involved, it's very wordy and all this. And then 10 minutes in, the 2 boys sat in the front turned round to their mum, who was sat like 25 rows behind them, because it's the biggest theatre in the world you've ever been in, and just went, I thought this was supposed to be funny. And I just like stared them down. I'm like, I got to get on with this. That was one I always remember that. And I did an Edinburgh Festival, Edinburgh Fringe in 2017 and 18. And 2017, I was doing this venue called the Banshee Labyrinth, which is a lovely little underground cavern, exactly like the sort of one I saw in 97, where I saw this comedian play to 7 people. Maybe it was the same room. And it's like 50, 60 people packed into this tiny room, right? They're all just like squished. And the show, I'm doing my show, it's going well, people are liking it, I'm having fun. And there's this couple sat in the front row, this older, like, you know, late 50s, early 60s, very dour, very stereotypical sort of Scottish couple who were just sat with their arms folded. And at the end of the show, because it's Edinburgh Fringe, I was doing the free Fringe where people pay what they think at the end of the show. So you do your bucket pitch at the end. I went, thank you for coming, thank you. Obviously I'm not getting paid for this. If you want to give me £1, a couple of pounds, whatever, helps me sort of, you know, eat and have beer, etc. And this couple at the front, this woman went, I'm not giving you anything. That was terrible. And then the guy was like, sorry? And then the man went, aye, that was shite. That was absolute shite. And then I started laughing. And I was like, well, why did you stay? And they just went, ugh, and they got up and walked out. And everyone else started cheering for me. Everyone else was like, that was great. That was great. And I got the most money that day. So I was like, next time I need a plant in the audience to be like, do that so I can make some money. But yeah.
I'm going to give you guys free tickets to come.
And the great thing is I used to, especially a lot of my shows, I just put a dictaphone on, I audio record it in case anything happens, or I can go back and review a bit where I improvise or check a joke or something. And I have the recording of them saying it, and I listen to it quite regularly.
Oh my gosh, that is so good.
Nothing better than an elderly Scots person just saying, that was shite.
You're like, thank you. Thanks for being honest. Oh man, Jimmy, it has been like a hoot. It's been so much fun to visit with you today. Thank you so much.
Oh, thanks. I had a great time. That time flew by. That was like 2 minutes.
I know. This is how it goes when we're having a good time. All right. Well, if you want to catch Jimmy at the Canadian Fringe Circuit this year, MASH is playing at the Montreal, Ottawa, Toronto, Winnipeg, Edmonton, and Vancouver Fringes. Evie and Alfie is playing at Toronto, Winnipeg, Edmonton, Saskatoon, and Victoria. So you got to check out all those fringes to get those tickets. And if you want to keep up with Jimmy, you can find him on Instagram at Jimmy Hogg, the Potato King, and on Facebook at Mr. Jimmy Hogg. Those will be linked in the show comments. What the Fringe is produced and hosted by me, Lauren Hantz. This episode was edited by Ben Ellis of Renowned Media, and those sweet tunes you hear provided by Paul Snyder of Orchestra of Sound. And our logo was designed by Ruby Arnold of Ruby Makes Things. Both of those artists are Canadian Fringe artists, so I just want to say that as we have our Canadian friends here. What the Fringe can be found on your favorite podcast platforms and now on YouTube. Be sure to hit that subscribe button so you can stay in the know when new episodes release, and keep up with What the Fringe on Instagram at whatthefringe_productions, and find us online at whatthefringeproductions.com. One thing I love about the Fringe community is that it is not high drama. But every once in a while, you get to the Fringe bar, it's late, and there are 2 people, and they're just going at it. And you got a ticket to the show, and it's exciting because
I get to just stand here and react.